What's up, pluckers and pickers around the world? Welcome to Six String Sit Down. I'm your host, Mitch Wessel, and I'm here with the magnificent Chris Gordon. Chris, hey man, I appreciate you taking time out of your busy gigging schedule to come down here and have a chat with us and have a good jam.
Oh, that was great, man. Thanks for having me.
So I'm going to start off with a soft toss.
Okay.
How old were you when you started playing, and what got you into it?
When I first started playing, I didn't start playing until I was like 14, like seriously. But what got me into it was my older sister. She had gotten this from a friend of hers. It actually happened in the course of 1 week. My life changed. I was like 9 years old. It goes back to the 70s. And she had gotten it from a friend of hers, the Kiss Destroyer record. And she was not a fan of Kiss. Of course, I didn't know who they were. I just saw 4 dudes painted up and wanted to know what was on that slab of vinyl. So I snuck into her bedroom one morning and stole the record, put it on my Fisher-Price record player, woke the whole house up with it, and got into a lot of trouble, but I got the album out of it. So then later that week, actually, she had gotten the News of the World album by Queen. So it was 77, I guess. And it's when I heard the guitar in We Will Rock You.
Oh, wow.
When I heard Brian May's guitar come in, that was it.
It's enough to suck anybody in, man. That's killer, man. That's awesome.
That's when I knew that was what I was going to do with the rest of my life.
Do you remember your first guitar?
Yeah. First electric guitar?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's it's still around. It's a 1972 Ibanez SG.
Nice.
Bolt-on neck.
Them heavy necks, man.
And it had, I guess they were like soap bar pickups in it. And it sounded horrible, but it was an electric guitar, so I had to have it.
So, later on, I was reading your bio, and it said you studied guitar, under Mike Rubin, jazz legend, Pat Martino, and with something that, made my eyes light up is guitar hero Greg Howe.
Yes.
And what was that like, man? What was it like working with Greg and kind of learning under that,
He was really, really awesome. It was, I met him at a show he was doing in Philly, and the guy who was doing sound for my band at the time was doing sound for him at this show. So, and he knew I was a huge Greg fan, so he introduced us. Got to talking. Of course, I was nerding out, fanboying.
Absolutely.
So I started talking to him about his records that he had out at the time. He was with his brother at the time, so he was doing the vocal thing. And the next thing I know, he said, I give lessons up in Easton, so I was like, I'm there. So I started driving up to Easton and taking lessons with him for I forget how long it was. It was a little while though. He was actually instrumental in recommending me for a gig in LA that I took in '91.
Awesome, man.
Because he was the guy that they were interested in, and he said, "Well, I'm not really." He goes, "I know a guy."
Yeah, right. That's always
student
good.
of mine that pretty much tries to copy everything I do, so hire him. So.
What was the most memorable thing you learned from Greg, you think?
The interesting thing it was his phrasing that I was attracted to. He would sit down and he would play licks, and we would jam. We would jam for a long period of time, and then there would be something, and I would be like, "What's that?" And I was more into why he was doing it than how, because I could see how he was doing it. I could watch him, and when I would get the lick down because I was obsessed with it, and we'd harmonize it and mess around. But I was really interested in his approach to harmony, like why he was playing certain licks over certain chords and,
Absolutely.
And stuff like that. That was, and so he had licks and stuff, but that wasn't really what I was there for. I was there more to get inside of his head, which was the same with Pat Martino. It was more like getting into their thought process rather than their technical.
Yeah, because Greg has that fusiony, melodic sensibility about him. It's just beautiful, gorgeous, man.
And I would ask him like, who was he listening to? What's your? And he, at the time he was heavily into Larry Carlton and stuff like that. So he would steer me in directions that were very cool, just from my listening standpoint.
Awesome, man.
Yeah.
So you were you're pretty heavily into classical music. How would you say classical music shaped you as the player you are today?
Well, that probably came through my mother. Actually, my mother was listened to a lot of classical music. So, and then obviously Yngwie happened.
Yes.
So,
Flip the whole guitar world upside down.
Yeah, pretty much. I would say it melody, and certain structures. I think certain forms of writing in terms of instrumental music. I think. I guess the best way to answer that would be with classical music. It's more of a soundtrack. It's more like scenery for me, So I think in terms of, I'm not really confined by a box pattern. It's more like, okay, well, there's, I can go different places with this, and then obviously working out a lot of the stuff. Some Vivaldi. There was Tchaikovsky's Concerto in D, which melted my brain for about 6 months. I spent a lot of time with that. So there's a lot of thing about form that I learned.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So in your opinion, because me personally, I'm a huge shred guitar fan, which I think you can relate to.
Yeah.
In your opinion, what makes a good shred solo as opposed to someone that sounds like they're just running scales?
Let's see.
Because there's always the less is more is more, the talk and all that. Like what kind of separates the two for you?
I think it depends on the context. There are certain shredders, and that's such an interesting word.
Yeah, I know.
It carries as much negative baggage as positive baggage.
Right.
It's kind of a polarizing thing. But as far as shredding, I think it comes down to like the player. There's something about what Yngwie was doing because of his attack. It just, obviously now, you can listen to it and, you listen to some of his later stuff and you might go, okay, well, we get it.
Right.
But, you go back to that first solo album of his and even on Marching Out, and there's just something that everything he did, as much as over the top it might have seemed, it was right. It was appropriate. It just seemed natural.
Right.
I think, so that's really the answer. I think as long as it's flowing and it's a natural thing, it's going to work.
As long as it's not forced.
If it sounds like you're cramming it, like, oh, I got to get this in here now.
Yeah, exactly. No, I agree. I agree wholeheartedly with that. Yeah. So you've recorded instrumental guitar albums as well as you've recorded with vocal artists.
Yeah.
How does your writing approach vary between the two?
I prefer working with singers. I can write better with the singer in my mind. And actually, my instrumentals start out that way. And the ones that become instrumentals are simply the ones that singers refuse.
Yeah, right.
I'm not singing on that.
Yeah.
So I'll figure out melodies and whatnot. But as a guitar player, I prefer to work with a singer. I'm working now with Abby Lee, who's a phenomenal vocalist, and we work really, really well together. I write the music, and she just, she grabs parts of the music that work, and we, And so if I have a singer in mind, I wrote a song once for Graham Bonnet, and it was so easy to do because you picture that singing. And, okay.
It gives you that springboard.
It does.
To kind of jump into that
It's kind of like if you're going
space.
to get into the character, if you're an actor, and you're like, okay, who am I? It's like if you were going to go do a movie with Jack Nicholson, you kind of get into a certain kind of vibe.
Right. Absolutely. 100%, man. So how did you've done a lot of teaching.
Yeah.
And how did that affect your guitar playing and the way you look at the instrument? It's all a different kind of perspective.
I think as a teacher, I've become certainly a better musician, because it helps you, and in some ways forces you to look at things differently because every student is different, and I don't think a one-size-fits-all approach to teaching ever works. And I've always, it's funny, I don't really consider myself a teacher. I think I consider myself more of a coach or a director. I find out what the student wants to do, and then we kind of find that path. And that seems to work. And it's helped me tremendously in terms of helping them figure out what they're trying to do, whether it's a technical issue, whether it's a phrasing thing. But it's, it helps me every day. I'm constantly learning. Right. We're all eternal students.
Absolutely. That's the only way to be, man.
Yeah.
So it's kind of tailored towards whatever the student's needs are, really. I mean, whatever their end goal is or their current goal.
It's always where they want to go. If I have a student that wants to, become a particular type of player, wants to get into the industry, wants to, that kind of thing, that's going to be a different approach than a student that, is like, hey, look, I just need to learn some chords because I want to, impress a couple of girls or
right.
Something like that. It's going to be a different approach.
So you've toured with Nashville acts, theater productions, and professional ballet companies. Yeah. So you've had a wide, as well as rock bands and all sorts of other stuff. So you've gotten a wide array of different kinds of gigs. Mm-hmm. Any advice for any aspiring guitarists who want to get? How can they? What's the best things they can prepare for to their best chances to get a gig? What's your advice on getting a gig?
My advice on getting a gig is, first of all, be a really easy person to get on with. Be really cool.
That's the most underrated. That's not talked about enough, man. Yeah. That really isn't.
No, you have to be cool, and you have to be able to deal with the unexpected, because it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And also just be quick on the draw. Changes are going to happen. Changes in the set are going to happen. Changes in the chart might happen. Changes in the directorialship of the music may happen minutes before you hit the stage. Just be prepared. Know your instrument enough. You don't have to be a virtuoso, but know your instrument enough to be able to get around.
Right.
So no one is... I've said this to everybody. If you know the note, as for guitarists, if you know your notes on your fretboard cold, there's really not much you can't do. You're going to be able to communicate quickly with somebody, and it's going to be great. And as long as you just get along with people and are real chill, and these first.
Yes.
Ears first. Always be listening to everything that's going on around you, because that's going to always be your saving grace.
Well, that kind of brings me to my next question. As far as you're a phenomenal improviser. I love watching your videos. Anybody out that's watching this, follow him on Instagram, Chris Gordon, on Facebook. What are some key components to being a good improviser?
Well, I appreciate you saying that. I'm not sure if I feel like I'm a great improviser. I work on it. I like to attempt it. It's changed over the years, but for me, it's about trying to make. And this is going to be funny because most people know me as somebody who will take a 20-minute guitar solo. Ask my wife, oh, he's soloing. I'm going to go catch up on my reading. But I try now to get to the point where it's just try to find as much melody as I can with what's playing, and really reacting to the track, whether it's jamming with you when you're playing the rhythms, reacting to you, reacting to who you're playing with. And that's what I'm always trying to do. So some of the challenges I might do is, I put on a backing track first thing in the morning before the coffee's even ready. And if I can see how quickly I can get to a point with something, So it might be, target tones. I might be trying to get a melody, finding notes or getting to notes in a different way instead of maybe just going to the note, maybe bending to the note from a note that's not in the scale. Kind of like a Jeff Beck approach.
Right.
Just trying different ways to create different sounds and tensions. That's trying to be effective, I think, and say something. Hopefully that's the goal. Is you
Absolutely.
Try to say something, to affect the listener. And if some days you do, some days you don't.
Yeah, it's like anything else, man. Some days, some days you're better than others.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, man, you're currently in a tribute band, a Van Halen tribute band called Romeo Delight.
Yeah.
What's your favorite band? I love Van Halen, man. We talked about it a little bit before the camera started rolling.
Yeah.
I think most guitar players do. But what's your favorite song to play out of that whole deal?
Let's see, favorite song to play. Let's see, because it's changed now that I play it live, because I never did. when I got the gig, I had to learn 31 songs in 3 days.
Wow.
So,
I mean, it's Van Halen. It's not just like four chord bangers. Well, it's pop songs. It's Van Halen we're talking about here.
and you know, getting Eddie's feel is that's a whole different world, and a world that I'm still working on. He's just such an interesting phraser. It's amazing.
So spontaneous but beautiful and fitting. It's crazy.
It just works, everything. And of course, having his, with Alex, that dynamic they have rhythmically, you got to get that too. That has to happen. As far as just pure energy, God, there's so many of them. But I remember doing Somebody Get Me a Doctor and just feeling like I almost could have jumped off the stage and done a backflip. There's so much energy with a lot of that stuff. I would say Light Up the Sky.
That's a great one. That's a great one.
That one just gets me going.
That's phenomenal, man. Well, man, I'm gonna finish strong with my personal favorite question. I kind of ask everybody, on the show. It's a really fun one for me.
Okay.
What's your Mount Rushmore guitar? I know it's hard. It's because I feel like you're. It's hard to pick just four, but if you had to pick four, what's your Mount Rushmore guitar? And maybe a little bit of why.
So the four guitars.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, it could be from any era. Just what would be your Mount Rushmore guitar players for you personally?
Oh, guitar players. Okay, I think you meant guitars. Okay. Wow. Okay. Jeff Beck, without question.
Another Jeff Beck this week. I like that. He's getting the credit that he is deserving.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because to me, it started for me. I mean, and Hendrix too, which I'm including Hendrix, Jeff Beck and Jimi Hendrix. They started it for me because if you take everything going back, Michael Schenker, huge, still an impact on me, not just as a guitar player, but I actually I really enjoy his writing, and I know people are going to say you got to put Yngwie in there because he was such an impact on me, but Brian May gets an honorable mention, but I have to say Yngwie.
Awesome, man. That's a killer. That's a killer Mount Rushmore, man. That's awesome.
Those four guys.
Well, hey, Chris, man, I appreciate you coming on the show, dude. I can't thank you enough, man.
I really appreciate you having me. It was great. Dude. It was great jamming with you, man.
Awesome, man.
A lot of fun.
All right.